The Brussels Report podcast.
Welcome to the new episode of the Brussels Report podcast. My name is Pieter Cleppe and I'm the editor-in-chief of Brussels Report. And I'm very happy to have as my guest today Demir Murat Seyrek, who is a Turkish-Belgian citizen. He's a senior policy advisor at the European Foundation for Democracy, which does a lot of good work here in Brussels on the topic of radicalization and bolstering civil society to help defend them against that. Murat is also a real foreign policy expert and is often in the media. He has his own YouTube show, you can say, called Talk Turkey. This covers, as you can guess, Turkey and the developments there. And he's doing that together with a Turkish journalist, a very well-known Turkish journalist, Nefsin Mengu. Welcome, Murat.
Hi, Peter. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Well, today, of course, there's so many topics that you're knowledgeable about, also the European Union and radicalization. But today, I would like to focus on your native country, Turkey, which is, of course, incredibly important for Europe, not only economically but also in geostrategy when it comes to migration, which is not a small, unimportant political topic in Europe, as everybody knows. So that's what I want to cover with you today for this podcast. And my first question is Erdoğan. What's your assessment on his chances to remain in charge?
Well, I think things are changing slowly in Turkey, and seeing the credible poll companies, it's not very likely that he will be re-elected in the next elections. At least it's going to be very, very challenging for him. Actually, he's continuously losing support since 2018 elections. And according to the new presidential system, he will need majority, meaning 50% plus one. And this is also making his job much more complicated, because in the past, in the parliamentary system, even sometimes 35, 36% was enough for him to be the ruling party. But this is not the case anymore. And that's why he seems to be in trouble. It's not that clear as the previous elections to get that 50% threshold. Actually, he's quite far from there now. But this is also a part of a long-term downward trend, what we can talk about. Because first he was in a position to have a majority all alone. Then he started to need the alliance with the Nationalist Party, MHP. And it's not a very easy alliance, I must say. And now, even with his alliance, his support level is somewhere around 40, 42%, according to many polls, like AKP combined with MHP. And of course, in the West, I know that there is this understanding that he will find a way to be reelected. And I mean, while it's true that he will certainly try all possible ways, maybe even including potential changes in the electoral system, his job is not going to be easy at all. And I know that understanding is very dominant still in Brussels, like he will find a way, AKP will find a way. But many people in the West, I think they don't really understand the internal dynamics in Turkey very well. Many believe that, okay, AKP is extremely strong, they have full control on everything, but this is not the case. And we have seen so many examples, because many thought AKP wouldn't allow the opposition's victory, for example, in big cities in 2019 municipal elections. But AKP lost almost the majority of big cities, including Istanbul, Ankara, and Izmir, three biggest cities. And then the same people claim that, okay, but the election in Istanbul is cancelled. You see, they will not let opposition win. But then the opposition won again. It was even a bigger victory. So I think many Turkey experts, or some of them, I call them so-called Turkey experts,
Huh.
claim the same thing for new parties. They always claim that, oh, Erdogan will not allow to establish new parties in Turkey. But I mean, Meral Akşener, she established E Party. I think she has become a game changer in Turkish politics. Now we're talking about around 15% support.
Oh,
And
well.
then there are also these breakaway parties of Babacan and Davutoğlu. They left AKP to establish their own parties, and even if they are small, they are there, and even a few percent can change a lot, especially that they are acting in coordination with the other opposition parties. So I think the main reason behind is many people in Brussels, they like to see things as black and white, and they like to categorize and analyze everything accordingly. And in
Yes.
this understanding, Turkey is not a full functioning democracy. And
Hmm.
then, as they need to categorize Turkey, they said, okay, let's categorize Turkey with the countries like Russia and Belarus. And this is a big mistake because dynamics in Turkey are very different. History of democratization is very different. And despite all major issues, I mean, we can really talk about strong opposition, civil society, and even independent journalists because they found a way. They were very creative to create their own channels and using the new media very effectively. I mean, we cannot even talk about mainstream media in Turkey anymore today because all those mainstream channels, people don't even watch them, but people follow all the new channels, YouTube videos, and all the websites created. So that's why I think there's a good chance for a democratic change. And in a way, I mean, all those messages coming from the West, oh, what you're doing is so nice and so courageous, but I mean, AKP will find a way and stay in power. It's probably even a big insult for people who believe in democracy and really fighting for it every day. So that's also something I think people here should understand. I mean, eventually, AKP, yes, they can even win the elections, even if it's less and less likely. But it's not going to be easy, and it's probably the most challenging one ever for Erdogan. And it will also be an historical moment for Turkish democracy. I mean, there are major issues, and not that from now till then, AKP will be able to solve these issues.
And that's in 2023 at the latest, right?
At the latest, if there are no snap elections, people speculate about it all the time. Opposition is asking for snap elections almost every day.
Okay, very interesting. Well, of course, very optimistic message, and I can only hope that you're right. But this sounds like very fascinating. Now, of course, the backstory here is the Turkish economy, I guess, and Erdogan partially because of that losing support. Now, if we look at Turkish inflation data, I mean, European inflation data aren't great, but especially in Turkey in the last 2 years, if I'm not mistaken, I mean there's been a lot of loss of purchasing power of the Turkish currency, the lira. Now, in your view, how is the economy really doing, and to what extent does this actually affect politics?
I mean, actually, starting with your second question, because that's the principal issue, I think
Mhm.
economy is nowadays number one issue. And for the Turkish electorate, two-third, for the two-third of them, economic issues, including inflation, unemployment, and purchasing power, according to polls, are the most important problems in the country. So obviously, this is of course affecting their political choices too. And this is also one of the reasons behind the downward trend in support to AKP. I mean, economic development and support provided to low and middle income families played a very important role, I think, in AKP's popularity in the last 15, 18 years. And at the moment, the official inflation is around 19%. However, there is major issue nowadays in Turkey. Like people don't believe in the official figures anymore, and probably
Rightly
they
so.
are right to do so. And according to many polls, very big majority, around 70%, more than 70% of people, including AKP's electorate, they don't find the official figure credible. I mean, personally, I'm not an economist myself and I don't have access to data, but many economists calculate the real inflation rate between 30 to 40%.
Wow.
I cannot verify this, but at least I can tell you that many prestigious economists in Turkey, that's what they claim. And according to my personal experience, yes, you can see that the prices are really skyrocketing. Even when I go there every 6 months, you can see the change. You can see the change in the cost of living as well. And this has, of course, major consequences on political balances. I think even in 2019 municipal elections, this played a role. And now the perception about economic issues is probably much stronger. And even more importantly, in the past, I think many believe that, okay, AKP would solve the problems. And this belief is not there anymore, even among the AKP's hardcore supporters. And this is also a major, I think, mindset change.
Well, and maybe also related to that is the issue of the refugees in Turkey. So, if I'm not mistaken, there's 3 or 4 million people from Syria currently living in Turkey, and in the media we saw some anti-Syrian migrant refugee hostility. At least maybe that was exaggerated. I don't know. Maybe you can shine some light on that, and to what extent can this have an impact on the EU-Turkey deal, whereby the European Union sends a lot of money to help Turkey, take care of these people. And to what extent can this have an effect on possible future deals that may be needed to cope with migratory flows, for example, from Afghanistan? If we have to expect that, that's of course another question. But at least, I mean, it's definitely a possibility that what's going on in Afghanistan will ultimately put back EU-Turkey relations in the spotlight. So what's your thinking on all that?
Well, actually, I told you that the number one issue is economy, according to polls, and number two issue is the refugees. And actually, compared to the EU member states, we didn't really see a very strong anti-refugee sentiment in Turkey, like back in 2015, 16. But until the economic issues emerged, this was the case. And refugee issue was not even a part of the political debate until recently. Even when the anti-refugee sentiment started to be powerful among people, many political parties didn't really abuse this in opposition. However, yes, this is rapidly changing. The refugee issue has also become one of the fundamental issues in politics because the level of discontent is very high nowadays, and the hostility towards refugees is increasing. And a game-changing development, I think the opposition parties have started to use this against the government. So they are connecting the refugee issue to the unsuccessful foreign policy of the AKP. And they claim that when they come to power, they will find ways to send most of the refugees back to Syria. I mean, you can question whether this is realistic or not. In my opinion, it's not realistic. They are a big majority of them. They are there to stay. Uh, but now the opposition, at least using this, and people they like to hear this apparently, because there is really this anti-refugee feeling at the moment, and also the potential refugee wave from Afghanistan, I think, also contributed into the fear in society. I think Turkey has really reached a point where probably Germany reached 5 years ago. And of course, this was rather quick for Germany. I mean, it was 1 year after refugee crisis and after 1 million refugees. In Turkey, this is happening while hosting more than 4 million refugees, and when there's a new prospect actually for a new refugee wave. But the result is the same. Turkey doesn't want any more refugees, and no deal can change that. I mean, Turkey has also started to control the borders more effectively, especially after the videos emerged this summer showing small groups of Afghan men crossing the border just like very easily, as if just like a touristic trip. And such news also created a lot of anger in Turkey. So now the government actually, they don't even have a choice. I mean, in terms of the refugee policy, they need to be seen also as anti-refugee. I mean, not in terms of the people already in Turkey, but in terms of new refugees. I mean, no one wants new refugees in Turkey anymore. And it's part of the domestic politics now. And it will be one of the fundamental issues during the election campaign, too. This may not have actually direct consequences for the current deal with the EU, especially I think if the EU keeps the promise to renew the financial support to refugees in Turkey. But one thing is, I think, crystal clear: it's impossible to expect a similar deal regarding the Afghan refugees, for example. In a strange way, though, this may also create a new channel for cooperation between Turkey and the EU, because EU doesn't want refugees, Turkey doesn't want refugees. Then they may need to cooperate and coordinate efforts regarding Afghanistan and its neighbors. So EU may need Turkey for effective cooperation with the neighboring countries, because Turkey has good relations with many of those countries in the region. And then Turkey may need the financial assistance the EU may provide to those countries.
Well, so something to follow. It actually reminded me a little bit on of Lebanon, where you had sort of, I mean, that's an extreme scenario, but where you had the civil war at some point, and it cannot be denied that the presence of large group of Palestinian refugees sort of altered the balance in Lebanon. Just reminded me, and therefore sort of like destabilized the situation, just as a reminder that it's not just in the West that disorderly migration flows can be a very important political topic and political dynamite that we should never underestimate. I think. I mean, as
Yeah,
also
yeah,
supporters of migration, we I think have to be very mindful that it happens in an orderly manner, or the backlash can be really dangerous.
yeah. But I mean, also the difference in Turkey probably, I mean, we cannot see any political parties who would really be in a position to use refugees for political power. I mean, at the moment, the entire, I think, the electorate from AKP to almost left and social democrats, they are all against new refugees. So it's even quite different than Western Europe. Here, at least, we can see that divide between central right and central left. In Turkey, I mean, the party who started this rhetoric of sending back the Syrian refugees by having negotiating a deal with Assad, this sort of rhetoric is coming from actually central left opposition party.
Oh, well. Okay, well, interesting. Next question, more about Turkey and its relationship with NATO. So there's been all this talk of Turkey getting closer to Russia, and then of course the example that's often given is the fact that Turkey is purchasing Russian S-400 missile defense systems from Russia, and especially the United States is very is quite angry about it and annoyed. Now, what's your idea about this? And maybe more broadly, is there also an approachment between Turkey and China?
Well, one thing is very clear. We cannot really easily talk about a clear foreign policy line nowadays. Yes, AKP tried to have better relations with Russia, but also they learned, I think, in a hard way that Russia is not a partner like the US or the EU. Moreover, Turkey, Russia, they don't really have common interests. I mean, they have actually conflicting interests in many regions, including Western Balkans, Eastern Mediterranean, Southern Caucasus, Syria, Central Asia. And yes, Turkey spent billions actually for this S-400 missile defense systems. And in my opinion, it's unfortunately wasted money. Turkey doesn't integrate and use them, and probably they will never be used in Turkey.
Okay.
And actually, especially after Biden, AKP started to turn towards the West too, at least to decrease tension with the US, with the EU, but also reach out to countries like Egypt, Israel, UAE to normalize ties. And S-400 is still the major issue between US and Turkey, though. Turkey is trying to find an acceptable way for both sides, but there is no doubt that I think Turkey prefers better relations with the West nowadays. And economic situation is also, I think, one of the reasons, because Turkey's main business partners are still in the West. I mean, when we see Turkey's main export destinations, we see Germany as number one, and then the UK, US, Italy, France, Spain, the Netherlands. We don't see Russia, we don't see China. And that's why it's actually natural to want better ties with the West, especially if you are experiencing economic issues in the country. There is no consistency, though. I mean, we like it or not, the old Turkey before AKP had a clear foreign policy, pro-West, pro-NATO, and we cannot see a clear policy line anymore. I mean, they tried all these different policies, like some neo-Ottoman, some approaching to Muslim countries, some approaching to the Middle East to be the leader of that world, so-called. But it failed. It failed massively. And people in Turkey nowadays, they don't even want to hear about the Middle East. That's why, in a very actually ironic way, because the support to the EU process in Turkey, it was really like historically low number a few years ago, under 50%. And now last 2-3 years, we see that it's back to like 60-65%, because
Okay.
people again see the West as the only credible alternative. They don't want to hear about Middle East, Russia, China. And of course, cooperation with China is there. And it's again, I think, a bit connected to the economic issues as well. Of course, I mean, China cannot all alone be enough for Turkish economy, but many Chinese companies are, yes, investing in Turkey. Some Chinese banks are giving credits and loans. And this is not very sustainable, though, because at the political level, yes, there is cooperation, but anti-China feeling is extremely strong among Turkish public, and people are very sensitive about the Uyghur issue because
Yes.
it's a Turkic group, and they just feel
Exactly.
like, okay, they are the brothers, and China is putting a lot of pressure on them. China is killing them, so it's impossible to create that sort of really people-to-people connection between Turkey and China. That's why such a policy line cannot be sustainable. And maybe one last thing I must add, that cooperation with the United Kingdom has also been upgraded following Brexit. I mean, probably for economic, political, even military relations, it is at a historically top point, and we should also watch this trend very carefully. I mean, the political dialogue is at very high level between Turkey and the UK, but also economic and security cooperation too.
Oh, it's very interesting. Especially the last point. I don't think that has been already on the radar of many people here in Brussels. Now, last question, which is a little bit tied in what we just discussed, and maybe what we could call the neo-Ottoman sort of approach, is that you now see Turkey being active not only in Syria, which is sort of, let's say, related to its border protection, but also in Libya. And then there were even talks of, I'm not sure to what extent that has been realized, of Turkey securing the airport in Afghanistan, in Kabul. What is going on there? Is there like is this a trend, or is this just something that happened more sort of by accident?
I mean, seeing the coast in Afghanistan, I think that plan is not going to be realized. But Turkey, yes, the government, they try to play an active role in Afghanistan too, and in an ironic way, actually, the West needs that too, because in a way, Turkey is one of the only countries can talk to many actors in the region. And it's not only about this government. I mean, historically, there are this ties, and even for the NATO soldiers in Afghanistan, I know that many NATO vehicles, for example, they were just using the Turkish flag when they were just traveling between different parts of
Okay.
Afghanistan. So, I mean, being active in Afghanistan, Syria, Libya, in different parts of the world is not a bad thing per se, but the main issue here is predictability. I mean, in the past, Turkey was a predictable and reliable partner, and this image has changed a lot, I think, in the last 10 years. So, otherwise, I think the West needs Turkey, Turkey needs West, and there's this reciprocal need. And Russia or China, or even Russia and China combined, cannot really present an alternative to Turkey. And in return, the West really needs Turkey against this threat as well, Russian and Chinese. And actually, even certain policies of Turkey, probably in Libya and Afghanistan, are actually not even against the interests of the West. Sometimes even in the interest of some Western countries, including the US. The issue is more about trust, predictability, and the culture of working together. And this makes everything much more complicated for both sides. And this is really, I think, very difficult to restore as long as AKP is in power. But of course, we need to watch closely as well, because in case of a political change after the elections, this dynamics may change a lot too. And we may see a moment where we can say Turkey's back, just like Biden said for the United States.
Well, that's very interesting, and we will of course monitor this closely, especially the upcoming 2 years ahead of the Turkish election. Will be, I think, fascinating to continue to monitor what's going on there. I thought this was a very informative conversation. So Murat, thank you very much for that.
It was a pleasure. Thank you very much.
And of course, we'll stay in touch.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
The Brussels Report podcast.